Will, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dion. Great to be here.
Do you want to just start by telling us a little bit about when you first started the business and how that journey came to be?
Um, well, I had I had a mortgage broking business that I started when I was 21, and I was very enjoying that. Really enjoyed setting up businesses, just starting business, being on the whole idea of sort of doing my own thing. Has been really appealing to me. And so set that up. It's going well, had a team of 20. And as I was kind of getting older, 25, 26, 27, I was just becoming more and more concerned about how humans were impacting the environment in so many different ways. So, just pollution, plastics, dumping, creating heaps of waste, polluting waterways, overfishing, the whole gamut. But the thing that I think is the most impactful and needs to be dealt with the soonest is climate change. And I made the decision when I was about 28 that I wanted to focus all of my business energies on climate change. And then you get back to mortgage broking and you're kind of like, well, how is mortgage broking going to help with climate change? The answer is it can't. So I decided that I wanted to get out of that business and then went hunting for a business that was going to, basically I searched for the best idea that I thought would be a good business, but then also have a significant impact on reducing carbon emissions, and looked at a bunch of different things. And essentially peer-to-peer car sharing was the best idea I could think of. And the reason that it does that is twofold. One is that every shared car that you've got sitting on the street means over time, up to 10 people decide not to own a car themselves because they can kind of access a car. So half of a car's carbon emissions are in its manufacture. So if you can stop 10 cars being manufactured for every one you can get out in the street, then that's a big impact. And then secondly, people who pay per use as a car. Like, think about if you've got a car sitting out the front of your house, you need to go and get some bread. You'll just jump in the car because you've already paid all the fixed costs. It's only going to cost a few cents to get there. But when you actually got to pay $5 to get in a car for the half hour to do it, you kind of go, oh, well, I'm going to walk or catch public transport. So people who car share drive a lot less. So that was kind of the initial thesis about why we got into it. So and has been the big why for me sort of throughout the whole journey.
What was the biggest challenge that you faced when you started it to get traction to convince people to do that? Because Australians are probably very comfortable and very used to having a car. So not they necessarily need one, but they automatically do that, right? It's almost like a rite of passage. You buy a car when you turn 18 or whatever it might be. So how did you go down that path of talking to people who are customers?
Yeah. Well, there were lots of challenges. For example, you've got to build an acceptable level of technology so that people will actually use the service, which is a lot in itself. But I think one of the biggest ones was you needed to create enough density of cars in a particular area so that you become a really convenient service for people who live in that area. So our strategy at the start was we only launched in Bondi. So we picked one suburb, which was Bondi. We picked that because that's where there's a traditional car sharing company where they owned all the cars called GoGet. Their biggest suburb was Bondi. That's where so we thought, oh, it must be working there. Let's start just in Bondi. We focused all of our efforts on getting 25 cars in Bondi, which made us the biggest car sharing operator, made us very convenient if you lived in Bondi, because people who live outside Bondi don't really care about, people who live in Bondi don't care if you've got a car in Surrey Hills. They only care if you've got a car in Bondi. So focused all of our efforts initially on just getting supply in one suburb. So we, letterbox dropped the hell out of that suburb, went to the Bondi farmers market. I did that every week for a year. We got PR in the Wentworth Courier, which is the local Bondi rag. everything was Bondi, and we just focused on getting cars and borrowers in Bondi only, so that if you were a borrower looking to get a car, there was heaps around. So we kind of created Bondi as our prototype, and we got the cars in Bondi being used, 6 or 7 times a month, which was like enough for us to go, shit, this can be successful. And then on the back of that, we then raised a chunk of money to expand outside into other suburbs and into Melbourne, and then on from there. So there's quite an interesting case study. Another company, peer-to-peer car sharing, so doing exactly the same thing, started the same month as us, and they launched Australia-wide. They were in airports and in every suburb in Australia. They got apps straight away. All we had was this crappy website, but with actual density, an actual product that was useful to people. They had an Android app, an Apple app, a fancier website spread out everywhere. They were spread so thin, and they shut down after about 4 months because they just couldn't get any traction.
I mean, I imagine it's capital intensive, right?
It's very capital intensive because all two-sided marketplaces, you've got to build up.
Yeah.
But you basically got to build two businesses in one, because you can't control either side. But yeah, I think most businesses, I mean, for us, it was that geographic focus that we needed. And for most businesses, there is like, I'm a big fan on when you're trying to get that initial test going, do that pilot, work out what's the narrowest bit that you can focus on. For some, it's geography. For some, it's like segmenting whatever the market is and just getting really tight so you can kind of prove one point and get good at that before you expand out.
Yeah. Now, that makes a lot of sense. And when, as you're doing that strategy, when did you realize that, hey, we've got something here that can work?
Well, I guess for me, as I mentioned, it's probably when you've got a car, and the average, you've got 25 cars there, and they're getting 6 or 7 bookings per month each car, and the owner's making $500 or $600 a month. So you're kind of like, all right, is this a useful tool for our borrowers? Yes, they're using it. They want to use it. They're happy to pay for it. Our owner's making an acceptable amount of money from it. Yes. And then the next step, and the way I've always looked at capital raising, is my job is to truly believe in the product, and do my best pitch, do my best efforts to capital raise. But really, how I saw capital raising is, all right, well, this is third party people who aren't as emotionally as invested as I am, voting with their money that they think that this is a good idea. So I looked at every capital raise as almost like it literally was, but it's a mandate to continue on. Like, it's permission to continue on, because I've been able to convince other people that, and prove to other people that this is a worthy idea, worthwhile them putting money into.
And how challenging was that in the earlier days, trying to raise money? You've got obviously since then you've done a deal with Uber, but back then you've got Uber and all sorts of other types of sort of competitors, but not competitors. They're all in that car space of some sort. And there's obviously a change happening in that market. How difficult was it to raise money?
We were not a sexy startup. So, I've got mates in the startup world, and they'll tell me stories about how they go and pitch to one of the big VCs, and by the time they get home, they've got a term sheet in their email already. Like, we never got a term sheet. All the time had to started off friends and family. Worked very, very hard for all the capital raises. Had periods where the whole team went on equity only. And in order to sort of stretch out our runway so that we could get a capital raise finished. Never got a VC interested in us. Pretty much throughout our whole journey. Our investor base included a bunch of angels and high net worths, like just people that I'd kind of met along the journey at startup events, and friends of friends, and then we had but what was interesting for us is corporates got interested in us because, so if you think of the big three that got interested were Caltex, Hyundai, and Suncorp, and all three of those saw that the world of transport is changing. We're in a world now where everyone drives their own car around, their own petrol car around, and the future world is very likely to be autonomous car picks you. You press a button on your phone, autonomous car picks you up. It's probably electric, takes you where you want to go. So they can all see that there's going to be this huge disruption going on down the track. They wanted to be, part of it and learning about it, and so that's where we got a lot of traction. But when I set up the business, I had no idea that there was going to be any interest in us in that respect.
Yeah, okay. And when you've gone and done that deal, going from the start in the early days to the sort of, not the end, because I have read sort of where you've done that transaction with Uber a year or two ago, that in some ways you looked at that as the end of that journey, but it's also the start of the next phase, right?
We've got the world now, and the world that I think everyone knows what we're going to be in, which is pretty similar to, think of Uber, but then, there's driverless vehicle comes and picks you up, and it's incredibly cheap because it's only the vehicle costs that are there. So that's where I think that everything's going eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that and I expect that at some point it's going to look at the system's going to look at my calendar. I'm just going to walk downstairs and walk out the door, and there's going to be a car that I'm going to get in, go to the meeting, come back, go at the end of the meeting, it's going to take me back, and I'm all sorted. I don't have to think about it even. That's how I see it happening.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like the predictive, give whatever service it is access to your calendar so it can predict when you're going to need. It can just have a car hovering nearby, waiting for you to use it. Yeah, there's all sorts. So I guess where Uber is at is they have a absolutely fantastic product if you are looking to go, I don't know, 1 to 15 kilometers or under a 20-minute trip. But if you're looking to take a car for, to get around town for a full day, or you want to go to the Blue Mountains for the weekend or out of town or something like that, they kind of just didn't have any options there. And so what they found really appealing with us is we're a very similar model in the sense that we're peer-to-peer as they are. But so it all kind of matches up there, asset light. But they saw with us the ability for them to be able to provide, for Uber to be able to provide the full suite of trips for someone. So we want to create a place where if you go, I need a car, I don't own a car, or I need a second car, no matter what you want to do, whether it be a trip down the road or, a weekend away, we've got an amazing option for you. So that was there. So they approached us with that thinking in mind, and it kind of went from there.
So, well, in terms of, I grew up in an earth moving background, and so you're talking about sort of, if in effect Uber is with a driver, is wet hire, and then you guys are doing dry hire, basically the machine with no driver.
Yes.
Basically that's it. So they've Uber then come in and said, well, we do the wet hire, you guys do dry hire. We want to be able to do all of it, and it's a good fit.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got any listeners in the construction game, then that'll really help them with the analogy.
Yeah, that's basically what it is, right? That's how I see it, anyway.
Yeah, no, it's exactly it. It's like, Uber have got a taxi-like service. We've got a rental car self-drive type service. Yeah. So yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, and as you went through that process, was that? I mean, I know it's different in terms of what you guys do in Uber. Was that? But did you still see them as a competitor in the when you were selling the business or joining them? Did it have a sort of like a bittersweet type feel to it, or emotionally, how was it? I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess firstly, I never saw Uber as a competitor. Actually, when we were pitching, when we were raising money, the story I told and what I believed was that we actually need, for Car Next Door to be successful, we needed Uber to be there.
Yeah.
And the reason is the people who use us, our best customers are people who either had 2 cars and they go down to 1 car, or they had 1 car and go down to 0 cars. And if you're going to live car free or with less cars, you
Yeah.
need
Okay.
you
Yep.
need Uber for the short trips. You need public transport. You need the bikes and the scooters, and you need us. And so, in the same way that we work together well now as on the same team, we were kind of always on the same team, I thought.
Yeah. Okay. It's the same customers. It's complementary service, isn't it? When you say it like that, it makes complete sense.
Yeah. And we actually, I mean, we've done some people who join Car Next Door are actually more likely to be a bigger Uber customers. So our biggest customers are Uber's biggest customers as well. So they're even the numbers play out like that.
And what would you say is the biggest challenge that you've faced going into this new deal? You've been running your own or your company, you've got autonomy, and then there's got to be a degree of there's benefits, and there's also probably parts that are challenging, right? What's the biggest challenge that you've had so far with that merge?
I guess when you go from when you're running your own thing, you don't need to coordinate with any other party. So, obviously we had shareholders and had a board, but none of those shareholders, basically my job then was to go, right, we're here, we want to get to here. Here's the strategy for how we think we're going to get there. Board, do you agree with that? Yes, we do. Or, what about this or this? And then off you go and do it. I guess the big change now is that we've now got the shareholder, which is our 100% holder, has got a lot more specific ideas about how we need to fit in with what they're doing. So there's a lot more two-way coordination needed to make sure that what we're doing is in line with what Uber on the whole wants to do. Which, I mean, it's an extra challenge that we've got to do, but it makes complete sense to me that we've got to do it. We can't keep acting the way that we were. Otherwise I'm sure that we'd quickly become very annoying.
So, I mean, what you lose in autonomy and speed of decision making and those types of things, I guess the flip side is you gain in deeper pockets and breadth of technology and geographical situation, all those types of things. I assume that that's the exciting part. Is the next phase is the upside you've got.
Yeah, I mean, we set up Car Next Door. Our mission was and still is to free people and the planet from the one person, one car mentality. So it's kind of like what we've spoken about. I want when your car sort of claps out, or someone's come back from overseas and they're thinking about buying a car, we know that we're already having a big impact. And those people are going, oh, geez, I'm not going to buy another car. I'm just going to. There's cars everywhere here. We've got so many cars all around us. I don't need to buy a car. And then just that whole one person, one car thing dies away. And so the way that I kind of see it is, can we do that much faster using the resources of Uber? And I absolutely think we can. Like, they've got huge user base that are very complementary to us. Massive marketing skills and tech skills, and so all of that stuff you're talking about, and we're going to America this year, so we're launching in America. It's a very big project, but that's something that would have been years off had we been going alone. So I'm incredibly excited about being able to take the mission that we've got and what we've been working towards for the last 10 years, and being hopefully able to do what took us 10 years, do that 5 or 6 times over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing in terms of the acceleration that you can achieve now that you've got that sort of backing, right? It's very cool stuff. As a leader, when you've gone from running a mortgage broking business, you've got 20 people there, and then you go into a startup. What was some of the skills that you had from that sort of you could bring through into that new business that helped you in the initial stages?
I think when I had the mortgage broking, I had a business coach for for 5 years during that, a guy called Andrew Roberts, and he, and so he was very good, but basically 5 years of working out how to make that business work better and smoother, and how to organize people better, and what the right sort of meeting cadence is, and how to market, and how to think about marketing, and all of those things that you learn are completely transferable to Car Next Door. And so a lot of the systems that we built and had in place, and the routines that we had in place, I then replicated into Car Next Door. So yeah, huge numbers of things. So I kind of see the mortgage broking business as just a fantastic sort of practice business for me to get my head around how business works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was there anything that when you made that transition that suddenly you sort of went, oh, hang on, doing it like that doesn't work in this business, you've got to adjust? Was there anything that sort of caught you by surprise when you went into a tech sort of business versus something more traditional?
Have you read that book, The E-Myth?
Yes.
Yeah. You know how he talks in The E-Myth, like, so, do the job yourself, write it down, get a really good process, and then you can hand it over to someone, and then that person will do that process really well forever. You've got to keep them motivated, but then you can move on to the next thing, and that's kind of how you. Like, I got so excited by that idea, and I kind of wrote up all these processes for the mortgage broking business. And I guess I sold it before this became a bigger issue. But what took me a while to realize is you never the systems and processes that you create for you at a certain size just become completely inappropriate even a year later. So
right.
And so that took me a while to get my head around. So I guess then started Car Next Door, and we'd have this strategy and planning cycle that we do every 3 months. And then, that'd involve a bunch of steps. And I thought, all right, good, let's sort it out. That'll be what it is for the next, 10 years. But then once the team gets a bit bigger and, things change, all of a sudden that's just completely rubbish and we need to change it. And then, so our strategy, and I guess the big learning, not so much from the mortgage broking to Car Next Door, but just as I've been growing Car Next Door, is the only thing you can expect is that you have to completely think about nothing ever stays stationary. You've got to continually be evolving things and growing things. Otherwise, things stop working systems and processes stop working very fast, which is a bit disappointing. I'd love it to just work forever, but it doesn't.
You've got to keep evolving. And in terms of evolving, what sort of skills did you find that you developed over the journey? So, when you started Car Next Door in 2012, I think, and you've got X amount of people, and to the point now, what were the biggest sort of skills that you learned that you didn't necessarily have at the start, but you've acquired over time?
One of the things that I've had to learn is like real delegation. I'm someone who, if I'm in a meeting or in a room, you get really interested in what's going on, kind of want to get into the detail of it. And I think through quite a slow and painful process of just getting more and more things that we've got to do as a business, I have learnt that I need to write down and get really clear on what my big things to focus are on the week. And by doing that, when we get to a conversation like, a smaller detail one, I might nip in a little bit, but I stay out because you've got to spare your time for the things that you're actually, the big things that you need to focus on. So I guess it's just that, moving from fingers in every pie to staying very focused on a smaller number of bigger things that are really going to impact the business.
And that lets your people grow too, right? As you go along. I mean, you can't be looking over the shoulder all the time. It's not effective for you and it's not great for them. And I guess that's something that you've got to learn as you go through. And some people are better at it than others. But if you don't get good at it, I guess, it stymies your growth and your ability to actually execute.
Exactly. And you hear about this all the time. And we've had people come and join our team who've been working even for some quite significantly sized businesses, but where the founder and the senior management just can't let go of anything, which personally I would find must be horrendous for them, because if I was feeling so deeply responsible for every little aspect, you haven't got enough time to do it. It'd be a horrible feeling. You've really got to mentally let go of whole areas of responsibility, hand that responsibility over, create good. I mean, I guess what I do is every week I've got, I think I've got 7 direct reports. I'll have a half hour to a 1 hour weekly meeting where one-on-one with them to discuss anything, clear any back, what are you up to? What do you want my help with? And then really let them sort of go from there. I struggle to see how people can manage once you're getting too far into it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, and in terms of advice that you've received along the way, what's sort of some of the best advice you've been given as you've gone on the journey?
There's one that I remember quite clearly. I was, I mean, a car sharing business, a peer-to-peer car sharing business is a complicated, difficult business to do well. You've got expensive assets that can be damaged. You've got people on both sides. It's hard to sometimes know, who caused issues if there's issues. It's just a difficult business. And I was complaining to one of my board members, whose name is Wayne Baskin, who's a startup founder himself, and about this. I'm just, geez, it's a tough business. And he's like, yeah, be thankful it's a tough business, because it's really hard what you guys are doing, and that means, I guess, because it's so difficult, we've not really had any serious competitors the whole way through. So there has been no other peer-to-peer car sharing service in Australia the whole time that we, up until we sold to Uber, no serious one anyway, and that's because it's really, really hard. And then what he said is, if your business is easy, so if you've got quite a simple business that's quite easy to get going, all of a sudden competitors flood in, and then it becomes really hard because the competition's so hefty. So there's no way of escaping it. You either get a business that's really technically hard and you don't get much competition, or you get an easy business and it becomes super hard because of competition. So, I think when you look at any business, whenever I've looked at any business, even the ones you go, geez, that's a good business, that must be, that they must be just killing it. It must be so easy. It very rarely is. They're all hard.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is true. But like you say, it's a good insight, because it's easy to sort of think something's tough, but if it was easy, then everyone's doing it, and all of a sudden it's even tougher.
Exactly. The toughness is your barrier to entry. It just makes it so hard for anyone to, if we're an easy one, those guys that started at the same time as us that I mentioned at the start, they'd be still here, and we'd be, would have probably gone neck to neck for the whole period.
No, that's 100% right. I mean, and in terms of customers and consumer behavior, what have you seen change over the years, and even things like cost of living these days? Has that changed the way consumers look at what you guys do?
When we first started, people were using us just to get around, do little trips. I want to get to the shops and back. I want to just little trips around town. And then when COVID hit, all the rental car companies sold their cars in a panic, because no one was getting around. And then when people started to come back traveling, there was no rental cars anymore. And as you might know, the price of cars, no one could get a new car either because of the chip shortage. And so there's this massive car shortage. And for the sort of whole period during COVID, we became a major rental option for people, became a significant percentage of the rental market. And so that trip mix changed from just being just around town, sort of local, moving things around sort of stuff, through to that sort of holiday use case. And now things are starting to normalize. So it's sort of balancing more back to that around town stuff. But certainly that holiday use case is an area that we're really, really keen on continuing. But we basically want we want to have a car for every trip. You know, if you
Yeah.
if you want to go to IKEA, grab one of our vans. It's just around the corner. If you wanting to travel to Byron Bay and use a car for a day or two while you're there, we got a car there as well. So we want to have the whole thing, and I guess COVID kind of helped us with that, and now we want to help ourselves a bit more.
Yeah, it's really interesting how COVID, depending on the type of business you were, it was either really difficult or it made things open up avenues that people had never thought of, or it accelerated trends and those types of things. It's quite fascinating the way that sort of changed different businesses and the way people went about it.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
always amazed when I hear and it's so hard to pick as well. I'm in that first April when COVID hit, our business went down 90%. I was like, oh, we're in a lot of trouble here. But then it just bounced back because essential workers needed us. People needed us to get to the supermarket. There was just, everyone started taking local holidays now instead of international, and yeah, it all changed.
it's amazing how things adapt, right? It's quite fascinating. I've heard quite a few stories like that.
Yeah.
What about the business people that inspire you along the way? Anyone that Australia or just globally?
Well, I've got, there's probably two people who I think are really interesting. First one's probably going to be a little bit cliche, but I think Richard Branson is awesome. He's
Yep.
doing he's doing good things. He's looking for services that people actually need and providing them. He's very people centric. I've been to a few talks that he's done, and whenever he's talking about how to grow the business, it's all about how do you grow the people, and how do you and giving trust to the people making the decisions, and trusting them, which is something that I think is really important and want to emulate. And also, I just love how he's just having fun with it. He's got this sort of lightness about him. He's just he's kind of cruising around having fun. I'm sure he's a very serious person, but he
Yeah.
sees the light side. And the other one, I'm a big fan of Mike Cannon-Brookes. I,
Yep.
I, we've used Confluence and Jira, but that's probably what I most like about him is just what he's doing with his billions. Like, he's
Yeah.
very focused on applying his significant money, but also influence on adjusting the public debate about about climate change and environmental issues, which
Yeah.
I think's great.
Yeah. No, some very specific things he's doing in those areas, right?
Mm. Yeah, exactly.
And in terms of books, what any favorite books that you've got?
Um, Look, on the business front, there's there's a number of goodies that I've read, but I think my all-time favorite for startups is the Lean Startup. Have you read that one?
Yeah, yeah. Kind of Eric Ries, I think, isn't it?
Eric Ries. And the reason I just love when people who are setting up a business want to have a yarn with me, I always recommend that one, because just the idea of what a lot of people do is they try to create something that's perfect. They hoard it to themselves. They don't share any ideas because they think everyone's going to flog their idea. They overspend on this sort of first round of what then they finally get out in the market, and it's not right, and then they've run out of money or something. I just love the concept. The lean startup concept is do the absolute minimum to get some version of your product out there, and then get it in front of people, see what they think about it, learn from them, and then adjust. Which is, I think, really what it's almost a restatement of. I think our competitors, they did the let's make it perfect and then ran out of steam. Whereas, you should have seen our website for the first year. It was just, God, it was an ugly thing. Like, I was embarrassed about it. Our logo was horrendous, and we just did everything to the very minimum that we could just to get a service out there. And
Yeah.
but then just kept learning about where things were working, and just we learned our lessons faster. And so I'm a big fan of the book, and I'm a big fan of the the theories that he's
Well, I think that the process is so important, and it's easy to do exactly what you're saying, where people try and get their things done perfectly or to a level that they personally want to, because often people are perfectionists or they want that to be their pride and joy because they want it to be right and they've got a vision for what it looks like. But in the early stages, just that MVP type model, that testing and seeing what works, what doesn't, and then slowly iterating and building, it's invaluable. Even I think of my daughter here who started a candle making business, right? And she's in the early days, I'd say just make a couple of candles and sell them and see what happens. And every time I'd see her, say, how many candles you sold? I'd say, just sell 2, just 5, 10, whatever. Just sell a few and see what the process is of making it, sending them off, and you'll get feedback and you'll learn. But instead, and kids never listen to you, of course.
No.
So she went and set up the website and wanted to shop in it, and she wanted all the things, and she's sort of like doing that and getting things ready. And then she's doing a social media stuff and doing all that. And every time I see her, I'd say, how many candles you sold? She goes, Dad, stop. It's really annoying. And it's like, I'm going to get there. And I'd say, yeah, okay, that's fine. But you haven't really, it's a hobby at the moment. Until you actually sell a candle, it's not a business, it's just a hobby. We should really get it wound up. But then she went live with it after sort of 6 months and sold a few candles. And when she sent one broke in the post, and all these sorts of things, like they're the things you need to test along the way and find out what works, what doesn't. And there's so much time that can be saved by just doing things simply without all the other stuff, because you could have done it just by social media. You don't need a website to start with. There's so many things you can do to test what you want to test and learn what you need to learn. And it comes back to that book, exactly the sort of principles he's talking about, whether it's a tech business or not.
Or a candle business.
Or a candle business. You can save yourself a lot of hassle or just learn lessons quicker by just cutting straight through all the crap and learning in the simplest ways. So yes. I think that's a great book. Great example. I hope my daughter doesn't listen to this. I'm sure she won't.
How's the candle business going now?
Oh, she's 6 months of planning, and I think about 2 or 3 weeks into selling it. So it's her sort of her side hustle. So while she sort of works full time, so it's going along okay. She sold a few, and learning as she goes. But
that's good.
Yeah, she kind of sees what I was talking about now, that it's not as easy as sort of launching and everyone just comes knocking on your door to buy candles.
Yes, maybe she should read the Lean Startup as well. Might be a good one.
Well, I've tried to get her to read a few books, but like I said, kids will read these things when they're ready. They need to learn at their own pace.
Well, yeah, I mean, my kids just will never listen to me. It's so yeah, I understand.
That's part of the deal, I think. But sorry, I interrupted you with that story of candles.
No, it's. I think it illustrates it very, very, very well. The other thing I liked about Lean Startup, they've got a term like the Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is behind the curtain, sort of. There's all the smokes and the magic stuff, but it's just some little guy behind the curtain, pulling levers and stuff. Just do everything manually. You don't even need to build a website. You could that works. You just do it all manually behind the scenes and act like it's a website, just to see before you go to the expense and effort of actually automating stuff.
100%. 100%. Any other books that come to mind?
There's another one that I really like. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's about, basically it's a Stoic, like Marcus Aurelius. It's a summary of a Marcus Aurelius quote, which I can't remember the full quote, but basically when you see something that's really difficult and challenging, I know that my personal reaction is often, oh, geez, here's another thing that I'm going to have to do. This is hard work. I don't want to do it. All of that kind of stuff. Whereas to look at that thing and go, right, that's what I need to. This is where there's an obstacle. This is what I need to focus on. This is the challenge. This is what's going to help me grow and become stronger and better. And this is my next lesson that I need to learn in life. So it's basically a book discussing that sort of thinking, which I think is very, very powerful. Such a much more positive way of looking at life and problems than trying to avoid it.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. What about any quotes or anything, any mantras that you live by that or want to share?
There's a rip. I'm a big Winston Churchill fan. I've read a lot of his biographies and autobiographies, but there was a quote in a biography on him. I won't do his voice, but he said, "I like things to happen, and if they don't happen, I like to make them happen." Um, and I just reckon that sums. I just see him as such an amazing man of action. Like lots of flaws, made a lot of bad decisions, but he's just a man of action and energy, and I love that. And so that quote I think sums him up.
You can't go wrong with a good Winston Churchill quote, and there's so many of them.
Yeah,
Um, especially in wartime type, but just in general as well. He's got some incredible things that he said along the way.
yeah.
Um, and what's next for the business?
Well, I think we kind of, you know, uh, I as I mentioned before, I'm just very very excited about the opportunity for us being able to expand what we've done over the last 10 years and just exponentially increase how fast we can have try to achieve the impact we're looking for on our mission. So yeah, take what we've done and then supercharge it with Uber's backing. They're a good bunch of guys to work with. They're they're a business of action. They're solving big issues, and yeah, it's good fun. So, I'm very focused on that. And there's going to America, Canada this year, and looking to continually expand it. So, I've actually been busier over the last year or so working with Uber than I was before, which was a very big surprise for me.
Does that involve trips and trips over to America physically, and moving at some point, or is it really you can do this sort of thing anywhere?
It's certainly been done. Done. There is some travel involved, but I mean, most of the team is still all in Australia largely. Like there's a few people in the US, but no, I'm pretty keen overall to stay put. I love Australia. I don't really want to yank the kids out of school and go off to
Yeah,
America or anything like that.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, Will, thanks very much for your time, mate. It's been awesome to hear about the journey and learn more about your story, and really appreciate sharing everything you've shared with us.
Great to speak, Down.